Is buying a home right for everyone? Well, today we're going to dive into that. Ramit Sethi actually made a video about this. And if you don't know who Ramit, he is the author of I Will Teach You to Be Rich. He also has a Netflix series and he also has a YouTube channel. So highly encourage that you follow his YouTube channel. He talks about creating your rich life. And I apologize if I butchered his name at all, but Ramit Sethi talks about your rich life, right? It's just talks about your rich life is individual to you. And obviously there's certain measures of success, right, that are kind of universal for us. And I think one of the biggest things is people talk about home ownership. Now, I own two homes. So this was a very interesting video for me to watch, but I want to watch it, react to it, and get your guys' thoughts.
I'm a multimillionaire and I don't own my house and I don't invest in any property. But why? Isn't a house a great investment? Isn't buying property a great place to put your money? And surely it's better than throwing your money away on rent, right? Well, when you run the numbers, that's actually often wrong. And I've been saying this for years on my podcast, in my book, even on my Netflix show. You've been lied to about buying property. And in this video, I'm going to break down once and for all the four main parts that you need to know so that by the end, you'll have a clear idea of the true costs of buying a house and what you should do. Starting with part one, the dream you've been sold. What is that?
Yeah, so I just want to touch on that real quick. He does talk about, I mean, I hear this all the time. Oh, I'm throwing my money away on rent. And as a homeowner, I'm just going to say, like, obviously I don't regret buying the properties that I have. However, I will say that there are advantages to being a renter. And, sometimes it's just not in the plans for you to buy a home at that point in time. I mean, we're at a time where interest rates are higher, and I've seen even when interest rates were low, people rush into buying homes and then they have no furniture, no table, no nothing. They had to scrape some pennies together just to get their closing costs together. And now they're in a situation where their house pours. So, and then, you're responsible for the things that come up. So AC breaks, there's something wrong with your plumbing, whatever that may be, that is on you now. So as a renter, if you're at a certain point in your life, there's nothing wrong with being a renter. I mean, he just made a good point about that. Don't ever think that you're in a situation where you're throwing money away just because you're a renter. Renting might be the best option for you at that moment. And then obviously, if you have dreams and aspirations of owning a home, then yes, do it the right way. Be strategic about it. And I think he's going to talk about a little bit more about running the numbers so that if buying a home is the best situation for you.
The American dream. If you're like most people, you picture a single family home with a white picket fence and 2.5 kids and a dog. Think about it. That is not an accident. Where did that dream come from? That dream is the result of decades of marketing. Some people might even call it propaganda, including from one of the most corrupt organizations in the world, the National Association of Realtors. They just had $1 billion+ judgment filed against them, by the way. Let me explain what I mean. Most people in the world do not live in single family homes like we do in America. And yet we believe this is the only measure of success. Next up, think about the numbers themselves. Decades ago, your parents' generation, certainly their parents, a house would cost roughly 2.5x your annual income. People would put down 20%, and the total monthly payments would be about or less than 30% of your gross income, which includes mortgage, maintenance, insurance, taxes, all of it. Let me give you an example with some real numbers. If you make $50,000 a year, gross income before taxes, that means that your house would cost $125,000.
Now, yeah, he's going to show one in California, but yeah, look up your area and look what 125 will get you now. It's not much. Then this house that he's showing in California, 672 square feet in the middle of absolute nowhere in California. So he maybe could have used a better state to kind of compare what 125 will get you, but let's keep watching.
Do you know any houses right now that you'd want to live in for $125,000? And in that same example of $50K a year income, you'd put $25,000 down and your total monthly payments would be $1,250 per month. Have you ever seen a house like that in your entire lifetime? No, things are different now. And yet we are still operating on these old rules that have been passed down to us without taking into account how things have changed. And this still doesn't explain the craziness of people who buy houses for 5 times, 10 times their salary with 3% down. And I'm telling you this because if you buy something you cannot afford, it might seem like you are buying your way into the American dream, but oftentimes it will come around and bite you in the ass. Which brings us to part.
No, and again, that's kind of what I was talking about. You know, you got people that are out here buying homes that are 10 times what their annual income is. And, you know, you got a lot of real estate gurus. I know they're punching the air right now, but you got a lot of real estate gurus that are like, hey, put down as little as possible. And, you know, and even in this times with interest rates being high, you got realtors saying, hey, just buy the house and refinance. Well, newsflash, y'all. If you buy your home and it decreases in value and you didn't put any money down, well, you're going to be upside down. There is no refinancing. And number two, refinancing actually costs money. There is closing costs associated with that. So if you don't have the equity to actually close on that loan for you, then you may be in trouble. And you're going to be stuck with a high interest rate, paying absorbent amounts of fees and really never attacking the principal if you're only paying your payment. So I think he's going to talk about some of the myths here of homeownership.
Part 2, the myths about owning a home. There are 4 main myths about home ownership, and I want you to know each of them. Myth number 1, prices in real estate always go up. No, they don't. You would think people understand this after the 2008 recession, but there are powerful forces at play to get you to forget about this, such as the National Association of Realtors, your family, even the government, all encouraging you to buy a house. Remember, many things appear to always get more expensive. That is the result of inflation. But in real estate, which is opaque, landlords will often discount the number of months you can pay. They'll do rate buy downs. They will do all kinds of things to avoid reducing the price while secretly reducing the price to keep up the myth that buying a house always goes up. Myth number 2, the value of a house doubles every 10 years. This isn't always true. And even when the price does double, most people forget to factor in phantom costs. Phantom costs are all the costs of a house that most people forget about. They're phantoms. They include things like closing costs, taxes, property insurance, maintenance, repairs, even the gas to drive to Home Depot that you use, and your time, and of course, the cost, the opportunity cost of that down payment and what you could have made if you simply invested it in an S&P 500 index fund. In fact, it's actually quite common that you could sell your house for a higher price than you paid for it and still lose money when you factor in all the phantom costs. Remember, it is not simply the bigger number minus the smaller number pops out profit. That's not how it works. You got to factor in all those phantom costs to get your true profit. Myth number 3.
Now, okay, I have a little pushback on that one. He did say that you can put, instead of putting the down payment on your house, you're losing out on the opportunity cost of maybe putting that in the market. But he's using the same speculation that most people are using with real estate, that the stock market is always going to go up, right? And obviously over time it has shown that, but so is real estate. So I don't necessarily agree with that. I do agree with the fact that there are phantom costs involved with real estate. And I touched on that a little bit before, but closing costs, repairs, maintenance, taxes. We have our HOA hitting us on the head every dang on year. CDD fees, different things along those lines. So yes, there are different phantom costs that you don't think about as a renter that you have as a homeowner. I can't tell you. I was bamboozled when I saw how much landscaping cost because it's just things you don't think about, right? Before you own a home, you're not thinking about some of those landscaping costs. And I am definitely part of the pay someone to do it crowd. I don't do manual labor myself, not because I'm too good for it, but I don't trust myself out there doing doing any of that stuff. So, but yeah, I had to push back a little bit on that because I mean, you're still speculating. If you're putting a down payment into the market, you're projecting that it's going to go up in value, just like you would a real estate transaction.
3, you can use leverage to increase your money. This is partially true, and homeowners often point to leverage as a key benefit. You can put $20,000 down for a $100,000 house. If the house climbs to 120K, you effectively doubled your money. That is true, but remember this: leverage works on the way up as well as the way down. If your house declines by 10%, you don't just lose 10% of your equity. In fact, you can be wiped out. So it is important to remember that house prices don't only go up, house values don't only go up, and leverage can work for you or it can work against you. Myth number 4.
Yeah, so that's another good point. You got people out here, oh, take a HELOC out and use the HELOC. And anyone who doesn't know what that is, that's a home equity line of credit. And basically, you can borrow against the equity that you have in your home, but you got people out here saying, hey, take a HELOC out and use that money, leverage that money and put it in, towards another real estate property or whatnot like that. And like he said, if the market turns and goes to zero, you could be in a very difficult situation because if you default on that home equity line of credit, you could lose your house. So there's benefits, there's pros and cons. And, there's people out there that have you leveraging yourself so high that it's very dangerous.
I can deduct my mortgage interest from my taxes and save a bunch of money. Look, tax savings are great, but most people forget that they are saving money that they ordinarily never would have spent. As they put it, you don't spend $1 to save a dime. In many, many cities, the amount you pay for owning a house is much more than you would pay to rent an equivalent house, especially once you factor in all the phantom costs. And remember, those tax deductions that everybody talks about, they were reduced even further in 2018. So I would not count on this. When you ask people, for example, what tax deductions, they often go, oh, tax deductions. I go, what tax deductions? Most people have no idea what a tax deduction even is, much less which ones apply to their housing situation. Okay, now that we've learned to look past the housing propaganda and understand some of these, just throwing your money away or you're paying your landlord's mortgage, I got a question for you. Would you say the same thing about eating out? Would you say, you're paying the restaurant owner's mortgage when you eat that sushi? No. So why is it that just rolls off our tongue when it comes to housing? That's because somebody invented that phrase and now it's in the zeitgeist. And we resent that we might be paying somebody else's mortgage, but we don't resent when we go and buy paper towels and pay someone else's mortgage because we're paying for value. Now, this is really important. I want you to pay close attention, especially when you are talking about high cost of living cities like New York, LA, San Francisco, 3 cities I have lived in. Buying can be way more expensive than renting. In fact, it might not make financial sense at all. I'll give you an example. When I was living in New York City, I kept a very close eye on real estate. I was renting a nice place, and I saw that there was a unit right next door. Same view, same square footage, same number of bedrooms and bathrooms. And I tracked it. It would have cost me 2.2 times more to own than what I was paying in rent. Let's just say I was paying $3,000 a month in rent. It would have cost me $6,600 a month to own an equivalent property. You know what I did instead? I said, first of all, I like renting. If I have a problem, I just text my landlord. And second, I took the $3,600 extra dollars I would have spent owning, and I just invested it in the market. And guess what? I made more money doing that, renting and investing the difference, than I would have owning. No Home Depot trips, no renovations, no problems with the faucet, just living my life, texting my landlord, sitting back on the weekends and chilling. and investing $3,600 per month in the market. Look,
now he definitely brings up a good point there. If you are investing the difference, now I think that's where people get kind of caught up, is they're not actually investing anything. They're getting into rental properties that are above their budget and things of that nature too. So I mean, this is also assuming that you're looking at properties that are going to have equivalent. I mean, well, first off, I would really like to see these properties and see if they were the same square footage and view and everything, because if he bought it and he's paying 6,600 for his mortgage, and you're only charging someone 3,300 in New York, yeah, I don't see any landlord doing that. So I'd be curious to see what those properties were. But he does bring up a good point. If you are paying under your home affordability, and you're renting, and now, hey, things go wrong, you're hitting up your landlord and there's no sweat off your back, and then you're investing the difference in that isn't a good situation where you could end up making, where you could make 7 to 10%, depending on where you invested it in the market and what mutual fund or index fund that he's talking about.
I'm not saying your financial situation will be exactly the same, but if you buy a house without opening up a spreadsheet and entering some numbers, you are making a huge mistake. I want you to run the numbers. I want you to look at the home you're thinking of buying and calculate the true cost. That includes property taxes, which will go up, maintenance costs, which are unpredictable but still need to be factored in, even the $25,000 roof repair that's going to happen 11 years from now. You need to properly account for that now. Mortgage payments, opportunity cost. Use this to work out the real monthly payment of owning a house, and then compare that number to the cost of renting a similar property. If owning is considerably more, then financially speaking, it might make sense to rent and invest the difference. On the other hand, you might discover that it makes great financial sense to own. If that's the case, God bless. But I want you to understand these numbers before you make the biggest purchase of your life. Now, what?
Yeah, I think, again, that's another good point. You have to run the numbers. Everybody's situation is going to be different. So he's saying, hey, nothing against home ownership, but you have to run the numbers. Don't be just so quick to run into a property just because you want to be a homeowner. It's not all the glitz and glamour that everybody says, especially when you do it and the numbers just don't make sense for you. So he's saying, hey, run the numbers first. And if you see that renting is a little bit cheaper than buying in your area where you are, then don't be so bamboozled by the whole thought process of you're throwing your money away by paying rent, because look, it just might be the best situation for you at that moment. And I can guarantee you, if you were doing his method where he's saying, hey, whatever you were going to pay on your mortgage, if you can find something that's 20, 30, 40% less than what your mortgage was going to be, and all the phantom costs that he talks about, if you could find something that's less than that and then invest the difference of what you're paying on rent, you will be in a great situation moving forward. But it's also not to say that, hey, if the numbers do work out, you could have a property that has 30, 40% of equity gained in it. For example, if you bought your home in 2018, 2019, 2020, you're probably looking at anywhere from 20, 30, 40% of equity. So I get his point, but I definitely agree with the fact that, hey, you have to run the numbers, and that goes for anything in life. Don't just run into something and to say, oh, okay, I can afford it. Just like cars, oh, I can afford $500 a month. Well, maybe you can afford $500 a month, but is $500 a month the fair value for the vehicle, right? Or did they just tack on another 12 months onto your payment, and now you're paying an 84-month finance note, and you're getting killed in the back end? But hey, you said $500, so you have to run the numbers. You have to be a little bit more analytical and say, hey, okay, I want to do this. how can I make it make financial sense for me to do this? And hey, how long can I rent, or what should I rent in order to make this dream of home ownership become a possibility for me? We're going to play a little bit more of this, and then I'm going to take it away.
What about property as an investment vehicle? What about buying a property and renting it out? Well, I will say that it can work, but you've got to really know your numbers. And in my experience, most landlords do not even know their own basic numbers, much less are they able to properly plan and set aside money and treat owning a property as a business. In fact, in my experience, over half of the people who write to me in financial trouble are there because of one of two things: their housing costs or how much they spend on their cars. So buying a house should be thought of as a purchase first, a very expensive purchase, and an investment second. Why? Why do you need to think about your house as a purchase, not an investment? Let me tell you, there are two reasons. First, the problem of risk. If your house is your biggest investment, then how diversified is your portfolio? Think about it. If you're paying $2,000 a month to a mortgage, are you investing $6,000 a month elsewhere to balance your risk? Of course not. Second, real estate in general offers a pretty poor return for individual investors. Yale economist Robert Shiller found that from 1915 through 2015, home prices increased on average only 0.6% per year. I know this sounds crazy, but it is true. Go look at the data. Now, if you want to grow your wealth, my suggestion would be first, invest in a 401k. Go with index funds. Let them compound over time. If at some point you want to add in property as an investment, sure, part of a well-diversified portfolio. If you want to own your house to live in, treat it as a purchase, not as an investment. Okay, we've got one part left, but before we jump into that, if you're watching this right now and you've made it this far, hit a good idea. I want to make sure nobody misunderstands me.
Yeah, so I think that's sound advice. I think that would actually cause more people to actually run the numbers. If you're thinking about your house as a purchase first and not an investment, you'll make a little bit more rational, sound decisions, and you'll actually look at the numbers. And yeah, now the numbers he stated about the rise in real estate costs were pretty alarming. So I guess that's a national average. So it really is just going to depend on your city and state and where you live. But yeah, that's some eye-opening information though. All right, I'm gonna stop it there. And if you do want to watch the rest of the video, I'll actually put his channel down here in the description. But he just talks about, that he's not against buying a home. He just wants people to run the numbers. And he does have 5 questions that he says to ask yourself before you actually go into home ownership. So it might be a good video to watch the end of. But just wanted to give my last thoughts. I do agree. I don't think we should have so much venom towards the fact of, hey, I'm not a homeowner yet and I'm a renter. And for me and my aspirations, like that was part of my bucket list. But I can't say that I didn't fall victim to, measuring success as far as as far as like owning a home. I could say I fell victim to that too. But I think he makes great points that you have to run the numbers and just make sure that the home buying decision is individual to you and it makes sense for you and your family. And so that's the biggest takeaway that I get from this, is that if you do run the numbers, sometimes it is actually cheaper to rent. And I'll tell you right now, if you were renting now, what I do think is a little bit unrealistic or not realistic is most people are actually looking at homes where their mortgage and their rent, at least on surface level, not with the phantom costs, are around the same price. So I don't see a scenario where your rent could be half as affordable as half as much as your mortgage, and you're able to invest the difference in that. I don't see scenarios like that working. I'd love to see some different case studies. If you guys have some, drop them below. But he's obviously a very brilliant guy. He's a multimillionaire. He's obviously had some proof of concept. So I always look, man. You got to be open to information, open to different ideas, and there's different ways to skin the cat. He's obviously made his money and been successful doing it his way, and there's also people that have leveraged real estate and become very successful. So there's not just one way to success, but there's different fundamentals and things that you can emulate from all of these people who have this knowledge. And one of those things was running the numbers, knowing what is the best situation for you. And so if you sit down, run the numbers, you see that, hey, home ownership is something that I see in my future and it makes sense for me, well, then do it. But if you also see that rent might be a little bit more feasible for you at this point in time, and there might be a better pathway to grow your money by investing the difference or of what you have, then go that route. But don't feel that you're not on a pathway to success because you don't own your home or whatnot. Obviously, it's something that I am very proud of. We own 2 properties. I'm very proud of that. We rent one out. It is seen as an investment for me, but I do like his mindset of looking at it as a purchase and running the numbers and making sure the situation is right for you. Listen, appreciate you guys tuning in. If you like content like this, go ahead and like and subscribe. Please leave a comment below. I'd love to talk a little bit more about this and get your thoughts. And the future I see is up to me. I'll talk to you all on the next one. Take care.